Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine. Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams. Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
This is a prayer that I have been praying for about the last 2.5 weeks for my lovely bride. Dear Lord, help me to remember that nothing is going to happen to me today that you have not allowed and will not bring me through. In Jesus' name. And I might add to that, she's home, but we've got a long road to recovery. Here comes Kate Smith and God Bless America, followed by a Patriot with a Pledge of Allegiance. Start things off. Please give me a call. Thank you. Good morning. And a good morning to you and yours, Zeb at the Ranch, on this abbreviated week, with yesterday being Labor Day, and we're on Tuesday. You may very well hear me refer to today as Monday, because I get confused and I'm old. Good morning, everybody. Brought to you by our Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations, very safe, clean environment, and the best in tires. And, of course, don't forget, Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Right now, let's go to the phone line and have our Pledge of Allegiance. Good morning.
Good morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate that. And right now we're going to skedaddle to the weather, and the weather brought to you by K&R Rental at 256 South, 600 west of Heyburn. Can't miss them. They're on the Burley-Paul Highway, and Roger and the crew get there early in the morning with the best of tools and equipment for you. Long and short-term rental, everything. Look at their front yard. They've got it all at K&R Rental. And right now, here's Gina with the forecast.
A wind advisory for today, a freeze advisory for tonight. Here's a look at your weather forecast as we get back to the work week after the Labor Day weekend. Today we will see just a little bit of sunshine. That's going to be more towards the afternoon. We are expecting a high of 60, but we still have that wind warning in effect. Coming out of the northeast at about 17 miles an hour, gusts as high as 26 miles an hour. Clear skies for tonight with a low of 31. Tomorrow, sunny skies, winds dying down, high of 67 with an overnight low of 37. Sunny and 70 for Thursday, Friday, upper 70s. That's what's your weather for Zeb at the Ranch.
Right now, I've got 43 degrees outside and doggone chilly. That's the weather. Thank you very much, Gina, and brought to you by K&R Rental at 256 South, 600 west of Heyburn. They really have all the equipment you need to finish any kind of a project or construction project, whatever. Get a hold of them today, 678-3122, K&R Rental. Caller, I'll be right there. I want to remind everybody, too, that after the long Labor Day weekend, maybe you were at picnics and barbecues and you spilled on this shirt and you spilled on that dress, and oh my goodness, take them in to Daryl's Cleaners at 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. Kevin and Cindy can get all the stains out and help you to feel good, because you're going to look like you're brand spanking new. You betcha, you and the clothes. So you be stopping in. Daryl's Cleaners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. These folks really know and they really care, and dry cleaning really helps the long life of your clothes. So stop into Daryl's Cleaners today. And a quick note while we get things rolling here this morning, and I got to admit that I'm way behind on a lot of things. This is going to be the most disjointed program I think I've ever put together, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. I want to remind you, too, about all your heating, cooling, and electrical needs, and it sounds like we're going to be aiming at the heating here the way the weather is. Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. The number to call, 678-0459. They're open 7:30 to 5 Monday through Friday, and they do provide warm winters and cool summers. These folks are good, as they have been for almost 7 decades. Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley. Caller, you've been very patient. Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Yes, at least one of my prayers have been answered, Zeb.
Well, let me tell you, a whole bunch of my prayers have been answered, and I'm not ashamed to admit it at all that I managed to bring Deanne home yesterday, and we've got a long road to hoe as far as healing up and getting better, but at least she's in a home atmosphere, and we can work together on her healing.
Well, let's get her back on the payroll.
Okay, I agree.
I tell you something about the weather now. My son lives out in the Emerson area, and he has a small acreage area. He has about 6 or 7 acres of grass hay, you know, that the horses really love, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he had cut that and windrowed it. And last night, at about 7 or 8 o'clock, I talked to him, and his hay is gone. There isn't enough to even windrow.
I can relate to that. I know what you mean. It was a horrendous windstorm, and I can relate to that too. You have been at my home, and you've been up on my sun deck, and you know those black carpeted, that kind of rubberized carpeting we keep on the sun deck. That was gone this morning. And there were 3 pieces, and I found all 3 pieces and restored the back deck, but all my buckets, all my barrels, all my equipment outside, here a rake, there a rake, everywhere a rake. I mean, I never saw such a thing last night.
Well, I had 2-gallon jugs that I use to water my hanging plants, and I keep them on my patio back there. Well, they're nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Listen, stay out of the wind. Good to hear from you, and I want to thank you and Nancy for all your kind thoughts and prayers. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Keith. Got to run. Thank you.
Thank you for what you do.
All right, sir. God bless you. Want to remind you about Dino Septic Service, and they are the best at what they do. You know, people, they kind of roll their eyes and cringe their nose up and say, septic service, oh, yeah, well, you don't want to be out there pumping a septic tank. They do, and they do a great job. All the liquid waste removal, sewer and sink drain lines cleaned, water and sewer lines installed, great backhoe services. They've got the most modern equipment to serve you. Please call them 436-6526 or 678-1638. Twin Falls can call 735-8281. Fast, fair, friendly service, the best. Dino Septic Service, serving you. Caller, I'll be right there. Stand by. I've got to tell you, yesterday when I brought Deanne home from the hospital, guess who pulled in my yard? And it was just like an angel showing up because I needed some help getting her in the house and everything, and that was Jerry Zollinger. Jerry, you just showed up just like the angel that you can and will be forever. Zollinger Quarter Horse Ranch 32nd Annual Production Sale is going to take place this next Saturday, September 12th, up at the ranch at 1994 South, 100 east of Oakley. I'm talking about colts and fillies with minds and talent and personality. They're going to grow up and be really worth your while. So check it out. Don't forget, the preview at 10, sale at 11 this coming Saturday at Zollinger Quarter Horse Ranch up in Oakley. And it's at 1994 South, 100 east of Oakley at the ranch. Don't you miss it. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Is everybody glad to hear the good news and good luck to you? And I want to tell you, there's some white dandruff up on Mount Harrison this morning.
I noticed that.
Out there, there's snow up there.
Yes, and Bob, this is what's really spooky. I know that in Denver, up in the elevated country, they're calling for 18 to 24 inches of snow. I mean, whoa, summer kind of left us and slammed the door.
Well, there might be an inch up there if they're lucky.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not ready for cold weather, and I appreciate your call, my dear friend. God bless you. It was very nice of you to give us a jingle. Thank you.
Good luck to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Calls welcome 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. This next ad, it's fitting for my lovely wife, Deanne, because now she's home and I'm the caretaker and everything. But when it comes to food and when it comes to nourishment, I'm afraid I fall really short. And that's why it's too bad I can't get maybe a drone to 3 times a day drop a care package from Denny's restaurant, 611 North Overland and Burley, and also another location at 291 Pole Line Road in Twin Falls. Great breakfast, lunch, and dinner anytime, all the time, all the desserts. Believe me, my cooking is not good for human consumption, so I'm going to have to do something to help my lovely wife. Denny's restaurant, it's true, it's America's diner. You can stop in today and enjoy all the great food at Denny's restaurant. Thank you. All right, calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. There's so much going on in the news, and I want to stress that I've had some difficulty, boy have I had some difficulty, in trying to get all these stories and call all my contacts back in Washington, D.C., and also New York City, and get all the information. But one story that came to light over the last couple of days, and this really bothers me. Maybe it's not a big deal with you, but it is with me. There is a New York City church that has a white priest, and this white priest got up at a service, I believe last Sunday, not this Sunday, but last Sunday, and condemned us, white people, Caucasians, for white privilege. And during his little dissertation, he made the comment that all whites are unfair and hurtful. So then, this joke of a priest, and if you're offended by that, I really don't care. This joke of a priest told all the whites in his congregation to denounce who they are, and then he said a prayer that he wanted them to join in with against so-called white privilege. I was so mad when I heard this, because last week I gave a little story and my own personal feelings about how pastors in any church and any denomination today have got an obligation to the congregation and the community to stand up and try to right the ills that are going on in the community with sermons that point out what we need to do as Christians and how to combat all this. And here you have a priest that is stirring the pot of racism. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Zeb. Hope you had a nice weekend and holiday. But I'll tell you, the old saying is, Christians don't become communists, but communists become pastors and ministers. And that's exactly what this guy is. And, it was Alex de Tocqueville. The thing that made this country great was our Judeo-Christian heritage. And that really took place until the Earl Warren Court in 62 and 63 took prayer and Bible reading out of school. I mean, everybody says, well, no, that's separation of church and state. You can't find that in the U.S. Constitution.
No.
It's just not there.
No.
But our whole civilization is based on our laws and everything are based on the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, and those kinds of things. Well, so if you throw those Ten Commandments out the door, then you see what's happening in the violence and so forth. But Alex de Tocqueville, in the 1830s, he was a Frenchman, came over here to find out what was so unique about the United States of America. I mean, we came from fighting the greatest military force on the planet, winning the war, not once but twice, and got religious freedom after that. And then he found out that it was the flaming righteousness coming from the pulpits. I mean, teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, to love your neighbor, but not to, bend to the forces of evil.
Oh, okay, Adrian, hold on. Let me interject here because I can't let you just go on and on. I agree with everything you're saying, but this story about this white priest in New York City, I shouldn't even have to mention that he's Caucasian. I mean, it's absolutely asinine to even tie that into the story. But to say that he stood up in his church service and condemned mostly all of his congregation for having white privilege and being unfair and hurtful to others, well, that's an assumption that absolutely should never be made. That's not church the way I was raised, and I would have got up and absolutely walked out of that church permanently.
Oh, absolutely. But see, this there's been congregations, we've seen it on the news, where people in gatherings in churches and outside of churches, we've got to deny our white privilege.
Yeah.
For crying out loud.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable that this has come to this point in our country. But we've got to realize for the last 100 years there's been these Marxist forces that have been doing everything they can to divide and using the forces of evil literally to convince people that we don't belong where we belong.
Yep.
You and I have both worked ourselves up the ladder to success. I know in my situation, I'm just so privileged to be born in this country.
Yeah, we all are.
The parents, the heritage, and have the opportunities that afforded me and still do, and those around us.
I got to run, Adrian, but I thank you for your call. You're spot on this morning. Thank you very much. I got to run.
Fight against this and stand up for Christian values. And anyway, you have a great day.
All right.
Thank you very kindly.
And by the way, that kind of dovetails into a guest that I have here tomorrow on the program that is going to talk about, and I'm just going to tease you a little bit with this because I cannot wait to have him come on, that the United States Navy has canceled masses at certain naval bases, and I can't wait to get into that. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. The menu at the Burley Senior Center today is lasagna with all the trimmings, and it's going to be great.
Okay. Lasagna. Joe says lasagna and puts a little impetus on the lasagna. Going to be good at the Senior Center today, and if they want to take out, all they have to do is just call, and it's only $5, right?
That's correct. You got it.
All right, Joe Taylor. God bless you, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
All right, sir.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Thank you.
Glad to hear your wife's recovery.
I appreciate that, Joe. It means a lot. Thank you so much. God bless you. Lasagna at the Senior Center on Overland today. Don't forget, help the seniors and stop over there and have lunch. Good food over there. All right, calls are welcome. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, sir.
My friend.
Yeah, I had the tree company come prune my trees last night. Got more branches laying in my yard. You can't walk across my yard without stepping on branches.
Oh, you hired that company called Windy Knoll.
Boy, was that something else.
Oh, my goodness. You know, seriously, I wasn't kidding. I went out this morning at about 3:45 after I got up to feed. I couldn't find any of my buckets. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, we had some covers off of patio furniture, took to the wind. We found most everything, but
Well,
oh man, my wife was sitting outside last night with the dog. She was on her back deck, and all all of a sudden she come running in, and I said, "What's wrong?" She says, "Look out there." And the wind had switched from the west to the east.
Yes.
At 100 mile an hour. Oh, man, that was something else.
Well, I'm going to ask Sean quickly if he could relegate the feedback just a little bit on our call. What can I do for you this morning, Doug?
Well, that minister, he's supposed to be an ordained minister of God, right?
Supposedly.
Right. That man needs to read the Bible.
Well,
that man is not leading his parish in the way that God wants it to be led.
what is biblical or what is God-like of what he said? He was just basically playing into the Black Lives Matter and other crazy perverted groups and condemning whites and saying that everybody had white privilege and condemnation and saying that they're all unfair and all very hurtful. That should have never happened from the pulpit in any way, shape, or form for any race.
Exactly. It should be ALM, all lives.
You've got it. And I condemn this priest, and I would hope that the congregate members of that church say that's it, and he's drawn his last paycheck.
Yes, I would say that. Here's your check. Pack your stuff out of the house that we provide for you, and you're gone.
Don't let the doorknob hit you in a very unsecured place.
Yeah, the backside.
Yeah.
That's just telling you what's happening, because if you read Revelations, and it says what is wrong will be right, and what is right will be wrong.
There you go. There you go.
So everybody needs to prepare, get right with God, and ask God to come back and bless this nation. If enough people pray for that, because he answered prayers with your beautiful bride, he can answer prayers for this nation, and we all know that.
I appreciate that, Doug. You know, one thing that is irresponsible by the congregation, they all should have got up and walked out.
Exactly. Yeah, I would have turned and looked at my wife. If I'd have sat in that congregation, I'd looked at her and looked back up at him, and I'd said, this man is not leading us to God.
No.
Let's go find some place.
No, I would have got up, and had the collection already been taken, I think I would have gone up to the front of the church and took out whatever amount I'd put in and said, you're not getting my tithe.
Yep, because it's not going to support and increase the belief in God.
Yeah, it's just causing more disruption and division in American society and actually world society.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a sad thing, but remember, everybody, you've got gardens now that's producing a lot, and you've got more than you can eat or can. You got fruit trees with a bunch on it. Donate it to the senior centers. And if you are unable to pick it, call the senior center, and I'll bet you they can find some volunteers to come out and pick it.
Amen. Yep.
So let's take care of our senior centers.
God bless you. Thanks, Doug. All right. I got another story that just when I heard this and saw it on television, I'm going to ask you how you would have reacted. I'm going to ask you that question and tell you the story in just a moment. I want to remind you about Berry Equipment and Rental, Sales, Service, and Parts. 159 West Highway 30 in Burley, 465 Addison Avenue West in Twin, and the Napa location for all the equipment, the Bobcats, all the shapes and sizes, all the trenchers, scissor lifts, all the Doosan wheel loaders and excavators, everything for the lifting, the digging, the pushing, the carrying. I'm telling you, they've got it, and they've got excellent personnel that can teach you how to run the equipment too. Stop in today. Berry Equipment and Rental, Highway 30 in Burley, Addison Avenue West in Twin, and Napa. Berry Equipment and Rental. When I saw this story on the news, I sat there and I could not believe my eyes and my ears. You're at a restaurant. You're enjoying, even through this ridiculous pandemic, and some of the absolutely stupid and cowardly rules that have been issued to us through this pandemic, and you're enjoying a nice, quiet meal with your wife, and all of a sudden, a bunch of BLM goons, Black Lives Matter goons, run into the restaurant in numbers of 30 to 40 people. And they run around the restaurant and they stand over you while you're eating your dinner, right over the top of you, and spitting on your food and everything else, raising their fist and demanding that you and your wife or whomever you're with at that restaurant raise your fist in allegiance to Black Lives Matter. I could not believe this. These worthless vermin, and that's what they are, need to be knocked down hard, very hard, and dragged out to the gutter where they belong. It just absolutely blew my mind. How would you react to that? I know some of you would have turned the other cheek. Some of you might say, well, I would have just sat there silently until hopefully they went away. But they came in, and they're right over the top of people, just with their hands and fists, demanding allegiance to Black Lives Matter. What would you have done? Supposing you were out with another couple. What would you have done? And the other part of the story that just absolutely fries the bacon to a crisp, how come the Democratic left has not said one word about these silly, childish, asinine movements of Black Lives Matter? They haven't said a word. They haven't condemned them. Nothing. What would you have done? Call me and let me know. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm upset.
Hey, I just saw that deal, but I think of this, I had a news commentator listening to a guy, and he says, in a way that could be helping President Trump, because if you're on the fence and you're going like, I don't know who I'm going to vote for, I don't know who to vote for, wouldn't that push you over the fence to vote for Trump?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind, sir, that the left has lost any mind or scruples that they had. I have no respect, and I want to underline the words no respect for any of the Democrats, any of the left, and I absolutely condemn and damn Black Lives Matter. I mean, this is asinine to go in and stand over some innocent people while they're trying to enjoy a meal with their spouse or friends and have this happen. Why, absolutely it should hurt the Democrats. I hope it tears them apart.
Yeah, I think it's got to be hurting. Hey, I need to give you some advice. Out in your roping arena, I went by there the other day. You got that little critter out there. You need to feed it its skin and bones. You have a good one.
You know what? You made me laugh this morning, and I appreciate that. He's not talking about a live animal, so I don't want all the animal activists to come over. It's just a dummy. And thank you. He's skin and bones. Thank you, sir. God bless you, man. Thanks so much. That was good. He's skin and bones. I needed that this morning. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Really, I don't think that I could handle it very well. If Deanne and I were out to eat and you had a bunch of these clowns looking for a circus standing over you with their fists clenched demanding you give them allegiance to Black Lives Matter, I may have made the news at 6 o'clock. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Deb. I'm a little confused there. Did they come into a church and do that?
No. Let me set this record straight. You got the stories confused. I'm talking about what happened in New York. A bunch of these Black Lives Matter protesters went into various restaurants and demanded, standing over these patrons that were trying to enjoy their meal, and demanded with their fists clenched over their heads, demanded the patrons say allegiance to Black Lives Matter. I guarantee you all heck should have broken loose.
Well, I agree with you 100%, but I think I would have been just dumbfounded. I mean, you just sit there frozen because you got somebody standing over you that want to kill you, and what would you really do?
Well, here's the thing. I was thinking honestly about Lunch Bunch when I heard this story. And I was thinking about when we have Lunch Bunch and you get a bunch of these absolute worthless clowns coming in there and demanding that our Lunch Bunch say allegiance to Black Lives Matter, I would yell out immediately, everybody sit still, put your hands down, never make a fist, never raise it in the air, don't talk to these creeps, and absolutely start calling 911, and hopefully the police will show up. I would not give them the time of day. These are worthless people doing worthless things.
I think that's about all you could do, because if you stood up as one person, they would put you down in a hurry.
Yeah, but as a group, I mean, these people have got to be put down. This is enough. This is insanity that is growing and unfortunately prospering in the United States that's got to stop. And I wish that the tape would have shown maybe about 4 or 5 men stand up and just really start making these Black Lives Matter people realize they made a bad mistake health-wise.
Well, I think that all your paint stores ought to donate paint to paint over these signs.
Well, it's not just the signs. Oh, I agree with you. I paint over the signs, absolutely. Tear them down, paint them, or whatever. But when they start absolutely hurting people's lives, and innocent people were out there just trying to enjoy an evening out, that it's got to stop. There's got to be some law back in this country. And the Democrats say nothing.
You know, a voice, some people trying to scold you or something, they have a commanding voice that, you know, kind of belittles you. And that's exactly what this Black Lives Matter amounts to.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Put you down.
Yep, absolutely. Keith, thank you for your call. Always. Appreciate you and Nancy. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. No, it's got to stop. I don't care if it's a restaurant here in Idaho. I don't care if it's down in Arkansas. I don't care if it's in Florida. I don't care if it's in New York. I don't care where. Black Lives Matter is absolutely a heinous, absolute criminal organization, and I will do all I can to fight them. And now, here's something else to worry about. Major colleges and universities deserve, many of them, I didn't say all of them, deserve to go broke and shut their doors. I'll give you a couple of examples. Washington and Lee College has started up a course on how to become an anarchist. I want those words to sink in. On how to become an anarchist. In these times, in these days, when we have all the creeps and the vermin out on the streets rioting, burning, looting, causing trouble, killing, Washington and Lee College is going to teach a course on how to become an anarchist. Then, let's move over to Vanderbilt University. They were giving a quiz to their students in a social studies class about white supremacy and how bad, how evil America is. Oh, and on the reverse of this, a University of Southern California teacher was scolded, reprimanded, and put on leave for supposedly and allegedly using a Chinese word that some in the class thought was hateful against the Chinese. I mean, we're living in a world of insanity. We're living in a world of the students have control of the asylum and everybody else better find someplace else to hide. This just does not make any sense to me whatsoever, that we're letting this go on. in this country, the greatest country ever, and is the greatest country, Washington and Lee College, teaching how to become an anarchist and get rid of capitalism. If it doesn't bother you, there's a whole bunch wrong with all of us in society. Calls welcome 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. And I got to dovetail this next story in a little bit because it just slides in like maple syrup to that last story about colleges. 52%. I'm not making this up. I got the numbers right here. 52% of 18 to 29-year-olds are moving back home to be with their parents because they're too afraid of the world today and too lazy to go out on their own. 52%. That's a huge number. That are, I can't take what the world is. Why, I'm just going to move in back with mommy and daddy, and I'm going to pull the covers over my head, and daddy he'll protect me. He'll go to the door with a flashlight. Or they're too lazy to get up and have any initiative to make things on their own. 52%. What are your thoughts on this? Wow! Where did we go wrong? I'll tell you where we went wrong. We made it too easy for them. We didn't know how to say no. Calls welcome 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Give me a call. I would love to hear from you. You know, in Rochester, New York, this is another story about these sleazy, worthless Black Lives Matter groups. In Rochester, New York, and I can't read the entire phrase they were chanting. No, I won't put it on my program. But I'll give you part of it. You can let your mind wander and conjure up the other word. They were chanting, give us our, starts with an S. Or, we'll shut you down. In other words, Black Lives Matter in Rochester, New York was demanding and having a riot, and they were saying, give us our, or we'll shut you down. And they're demanding reparations. The only thing they deserve with their demands is an extremely high-powered and very hurtful water cannon, and wash these vermin off the streets. Your thoughts, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Don't forget Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. And boy, it's true. Hearing affects every aspect of your life. And I urge you to be sure and get a hearing screening if you've noticed diminishment of your hearing. It's so easy to get a hold of these people. 312-0957. That number again, 312-0957. Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. Right behind the Minidoka Hospital, across from the emergency room. Don't forget Mount Harrison Audiology. Caller, I'll be with you in 30 seconds. Stand by. Here's Gina with the weather.
A wind advisory for today, a freeze advisory for tonight. Here's a look at your weather forecast as we get back to the work week after the Labor Day weekend. Today we will see just a little bit of sunshine. That's going to be more towards the afternoon. We are expecting a high of 60, but we still have that wind warning in effect. Coming out of the northeast at about 17 miles an hour, gusts as high as 26 miles an hour. Clear skies for tonight with a low of 31. Tomorrow, sunny skies, winds dying down, high of 67 with an overnight low of 37. Sunny and 70 for Thursday, Friday, upper 70s. That's look at your weather for Zebit Duran.
Thank you very much, Gina. And don't forget, I urge you right now to go to the phone, give them a call, 312-0957, Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. And if you are suffering from some hearing loss, now's the time to regain and help your hearing. Call them today, 312-0957. Caller, good morning. You've been very patient. Thank you.
Well, good morning to you again. Why aren't water cannons used more than they are?
I don't know.
I think that's the best source of keeping the crowds under control.
I honestly, and I don't care who criticizes me, I'd like to see these people just wash down the gutter where they belong. They'd be right at home in the gutter. And this deal about, we better treat them with kid gloves. Why, we better not hurt them. Oh, somebody might sue us. Oh, the heck with that nonsense. Get rid of these people, get them off the street, and let's start paying attention to the tax-paying citizenry that deserves the protection the police is supposed to afford.
Well, why aren't these water cannons used more, though? That's my question.
Well, call the cities, ask them. I don't know. I just think it's about time to go in and meet force and stupidity with a bigger force. And honestly, I say line up the water cannons and get rid of these people.
Yes, let's draw a line.
And then wash it away. Yeah.
You're going to get wet.
I just don't understand why we're catering to them. I don't like President Trump said many times over the weekend that these cities are completely out of control. Portland, Oregon, now we're talking over 100 and some days, and the Democrats blame all the garbage on Trump. This is insane. And now people are getting shot and killed in the streets. I mean, where's the law? Well, they're not doing anything because the mayors have put a curtailment on their action. I mean, this is ridiculous.
And there's another thing that really bothered me that I heard on the news just this morning. Said that Biden and Obama had more jobs than President Trump has today.
No.
And I do not believe that.
I don't either. There's so many garbage stories out there by the left that are put out by garbage reporters and on garbage media. A person needs to really sit down and study and analyze what's really going on. Keith, God bless you. I got another call waiting. Appreciate your call. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. The more I hear about this Black Lives Matters and the more I see what they're doing and the more I understand what they represent, the more I think that they are the flip side, or rather maybe not the flip side, but they are the black of the Ku Klux Klan. They're just like the Ku Klux Klan is, only it's for black, not white.
This is really an interesting concept, and I'm glad you called on that. But I would say this and add it to what you just said, my dear lady. They are much more, in my opinion, dangerous than what's going on in the past, in the 50s, the 40s, etc., with the Ku Klux Klan. I'm scared of Black Lives Matter.
They have the media behind them.
That's exactly right.
They are growing exponentially because of the power that comes with the media.
There you go. You are very, very sharp and astute. That's the whole thing. The media and the left and Pelosi and the Schumers and all of these people are standing up with tape over their mouths. They're not going to say any condemnation. The media is going to raise up Black Lives Matter, and they can do no wrong. You've hit the nail right on the head. And that's why, dear lady, I think you're right, that Black Lives Matter is far, far, far more dangerous than the Klan, whatever was.
Well, when the Klan was strong, the media still had some sense of morals, and so they didn't tolerate that sort of thing. They didn't glorify it. But now they glorify this very hateful, cynical type acts.
I'm an old man, but I want to ask you this question. I think you're going to agree with me. I'm an old man, and I remember Edward R. Murrow. I remember Huntley Brinkley. I remember those people, and I would dare say that the way journalism is today and the way the media is, they are turning over in their grave.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, I'll let you go. I just wanted to add that comment.
No, you did, and you added a lot. Thank you, my dear. Appreciate that. God bless you. Thank you for your call. Sharp lady right there. Sharp lady. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. In addition to what the sleazy Black Lives Matter did with their filthy slogan that they were yelling on the TV screens and everything, and they demand what they're going to get and everything. Then there were the naked people, protesters, that took their clothes off and were affiliated with Black Lives Matter, and they were spitting on people, running around naked, spitting on people. And once again, when the police tried to curb these absolute nuts, they put a spit hood on them, and now the police are being held accountable. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Zeb. I was scrubbing through the 5,000 channels I have on my TV. I run across the called the Learning Channel. And on that channel, they have a black family that just had 12 or 13 kids. And cute kids, and a nice family, and they seem to be really on the up and up. But what they were, all of a sudden, I noticed that they were teaching their little 5 and 6 and 7 and 8-year-old girls to twerk. Now, where the hell does that fit in with morality or anything? Because we know what twerking is. All that is shaking your booty and advertising.
Yep.
Well, why would they, if their Black Lives Matter so much, why would they teach those little girls that and put it on TV?
The mindset of today and the lack of morality, the lack of right and wrong, the lack of being punished if you're wrong and doing things against society's norms. I mean, anything goes. And if anybody has the guts to come up and tell me face to face that we're not going to heck in a handbasket, I'd like to see that person, because they need mental help.
Well, that I agree with you totally, and it also goes along with a lot of the white people who think that twerking and booty call is a fun thing. Oh, look at your booty, look at this and that. Well, all that really means is ASS in English.
Yeah.
And if you're going to advertise it, well, that's what booty call is. Like many people go out at night to bars looking for something, and that's all booty call is.
Yeah, but wait a minute, Gary.
My God almighty, nobody's got any sense anywhere.
Yeah, Gary, look, real quick, though, and I'm running out of time, but I think you'll concur with me. This all falls into the lack of church leadership and people and pastors standing up at the pulpit and condemning what's going on in society today. They won't do it.
I absolutely agree with you, and won't even do it here.
Gary,
in our own community.
So good to hear from you, and if you get a chance time-wise, call me after the program. I had a question for you, and it's funny you called. I appreciate it. God bless you, man. Thanks.
And I got a couple of pictures of you as the winner of 49.
Okay, thank you, my dear friend. God bless you. Thank you. Oh, I tell you what, people have got to start doing things and items and taking the advantage of their position to try to right the ship and steer a better course on what's going on in society. And I still maintain, and I will not back up, it's got to start with churches, church leaders, congregations, families. It's got to go. It's got to go. Don't forget your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Oh, they've got all your tires. And you know what? With this cold weather that's been thrown at us and everything, kind of makes you remember, old man winter is not too far around the corner. So be ready. They do have all the tires, all the tread design, all the sizes for your cars, pickups, SUVs, horse trailers, boat trailers, you name it. They've got them. And they've got the best in service, too, with brake service, front-end alignment, shocks and struts, batteries. Oh, my. They are good people. They care about you, and they care about your driving safety. Stop in and see James and Buell, Dan on Pole Line in Twin Falls, Lane and Rupert, Mike and Jerome, Dave on Blue Lakes in Twin, the Twist family in Paul, and my buddy Trent on Overland in Burley. None better. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. I want to say right now to everybody in the audience, thank you. I cannot mention everybody's name. I might forget someone, and that would be very hurtful, and I don't want to do that. Thank you for your kind thoughts. Thank you for your emails. Thank you for your cards. Thank you for your prayers from my wife, Deanne. She isn't home, but we have a long way to go for total recovery, and I'm probably going to need some more prayers, and she is too, so that we can work together and overcome this big obstacle. But God bless Deanne. She's back home, and it's such a treat to have her here. We're going to take a little break for a few minutes and then let the big boys from CBS come in and mess everything up. We'll be back in about 7 with Dan Kish. Oh my, here we go, hour number 2 on this Tuesday. I've got to say the name right of the day because I wanted to say Monday 37 times. Yesterday, Labor Day Monday, now we're at Tuesday, the 8th day of September already. Zeb at the Ranch brought to you by our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you with the best in tires. And of course, don't forget too, Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Right now, let's have this good word for Western Waste.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're all at the Georgia disposal. Western Waste Services, we care about our community, our resources, and this great land. Western Waste Services is lending a hand, always at your disposal. Western Waste Services.
Oh my goodness, get on the route service and get rid of your garbage. Call them, pardon me, call them at, wow, I thought I was going to choke to death, 734-6969. Tell them where you live, get on the route service, they'll take care of your garbage. It's gone, it's out of there. Thanks to our friends that are always at your disposal, Western Waste Services. Want to also give you a great big shout out this morning to Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation. My goodness, I cannot wait to get back down there and start having old Nick work on my knee a little bit. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. Oh, all the physical therapists are excellent, highly trained, very, very good with all the exercises and the use of the hydrotherapy pool. Oh, the only one of its kind in this area. I urge you to call the number 678-1191. 678-1191. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation. They can help you get back to being you. Want to quickly also say a great big thank you again for the long time that Hanson Mortuary has been on our program. Joel Heward, his family, and the staff at 710 6th Street in Rupert. Really, really nice people. They care. They care, and they've got flexible hours to serve you and provide the families they serve with the best possible support and comfort, always with the highest ethical standards, with unquestioned integrity. They care. Hanson Mortuary, 710 6th Street in Rupert, and Joel Heward also serving you and your family at Morrison Payne Funeral Home on East Main in Burley. Tuesdays are a special day because I get a chance to visit with a dear friend that is so knowledgeable about what's going on or not going on in energy. And that's, of course, the gentleman with American Energy Alliance, Dan Kish. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Zeb. I'm great. How are you, sir?
Hanging in, hanging on, just like the cat at the end of the knot, but I'm doing okay.
I hear you.
Hey, Dan, I want to talk to you a little bit more this week, and Sean over at the station, we got just a touch of feedback here if you could help me out. These people that are involved in wind and solar and these companies and all their claims, etc., and the solar and wind companies are saying that there is such an expanding demand they can't keep up with it. Is that really true?
Well, it's partially true, Zeb.
they can't keep up with it. That's right. Largely because most of the products they get are dependent upon China, and the supply lines from China have become strained because of the Chinese flu. And so that's presenting them with problems. But what they're really trying to do, let me tell you what they're trying to do. Their tax, they get tax credits, okay? The wind people actually get paid by the government to produce electricity through tax credits, which are different than your tax deductions that most of us are familiar with that we'd get for businesses, or, you know, if you buy a new tractor and you've got deductions for that sort of thing. These are actual credits, which are equivalent to cash money. And so if you owe $1,000 in taxes at the end of the year, and the government gives you tax credits of $1,000, you don't owe the government anything. It's dollar for dollar. Those things are expiring, at least for wind. And so what they're trying to say is, gee, we need these extended because we haven't been able to reach full. And so they've been lobbying back in Washington to try to get these. They keep trying to stuff them into every bill that comes along and that sort of thing, because over the next 10 or so years, the amount of money that taxpayers are on the hook for wind producers is somewhere in the range of $40 billion.
Oh, my.
Billion with a B. Because every time they turn, they get money. That's why they, even if we don't need the electricity, which sometimes happens. There's a lot of complicated things about it, but in essence what they're trying to do is say there's huge demand for this. Any demand that's created for it is because of the tax credits. Even Warren Buffett said that the only reason to build these things is, and he owns a bunch of them, is the tax credits. And the fact that those are expiring, so they're trying to gin up support for them right now.
Let me ask you something in regards to the intricacies of wind and solar energy. Why couldn't you and I set up a panel discussion with these people and meet them head on, and just everything they say we'd have a rebuttal to with facts and figures, etc. Is anybody doing this across the United States? Are they sitting down with these people that are with the solar and the wind, and they're saying, well, yeah, but what about this? Costs are going to go up. The consumers are going to have to pay more. I mean, my goodness, and it's not really anything vibrant or good for the ecology, because we're going to be seeing so many destruction. Land acres are going to be used for all this idiocy. Why couldn't we put a panel discussion and really get things going with these people?
Well, because they won't do it, Zeb, is the truth. They don't want to discuss these things because, let's face it, the media is on their side.
Yep.
I mean, if everything's going your way in terms of the story that's being told out there, why would you jump into a potential discussion with somebody on the other side about these? So they're very few and far between that they've happened. I've seen some panels with people from differing sides on them in Washington, and occasionally they'll have something like that. But basically, if the media, which is the mouthpiece for the American public, that's how they get their information, is telling your story and saying you're all great, why would you want to give somebody who has a different view of you access to those people? So that's the simple answer to it. The other thing about this, I guess I'll add, and I forgot to mention, is that states require a certain percentage of this. 29 states at this point require renewable energy to be purchased by the utilities. So on top of any demand that's being done is because the governments have said you've got to buy this kind of electricity. So that's a pretty good market. You get, first of all, I mean, think about it in livestock. The government says you must eat beef, and we're going to subsidize all the beef that you produce. Good business?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was sitting here, and I'm trying to carry on a conversation. My wife is in the other room. I apologize, Dan. But one of the things that came up in the last couple of days, when I was up at the hospital visiting her last week, I got into a discussion with a gentleman about green energy and the elimination of all fossil fuels and all the cars, all the trucks, all the pickups, everything. And he brought up a really interesting point in the conversation. Where would we put all these old dinosaurs that use fossil fuels? What would they do with them? We're talking millions upon millions upon millions of vehicles that would be on the scrap heap. What are we going to do with them?
We could probably sell them to the Chinese. They could scrap them out and use them to make frames for the solar panels that our government would be requiring us to purchase from them. That and they melt them using the coal, since they use over half the world's coal. I'm being a little facetious, but the fact is we scrap things and recycle things and use them for other things. But ultimately, what would happen, since the Chinese control the bulk of the manufacturing in this area, is that would end up coming back in products made by them.
You know, part of our discussion a couple of weeks ago, I had a couple of questions and we ran out of time. You are very, very well educated on what is going to happen if they force us, they being the government, to go with strictly electric vehicles. And I wanted to ask you more about the batteries about these selected vehicles. Have they performed at a peak where cars can depend on them and the owners can depend on them? Are truck and big truck equipment, delivery trucks, do they have batteries ready for them? And along with all this, do they have the batteries? What's going to happen if you're driving between Boise and Twin Falls and your battery goes in the dumpster? Are places going to be available to deliver and install new batteries? What are the costs going to be? I mean, tell us some of that.
Well, Zeb, very, very good question. They're working. The battery system is dependent upon battery-powered vehicles. EVs are dependent upon having very expensive charging systems available across the country. So what's happening is the utilities, the electric utilities, want this because remember, we've talked before about how utilities, if they invest money, if it's okay for them to invest money, the government says you can invest consumers' money in this, they get 11%, basically 11% return on investment on average. So for any new capital they expend. So the idea of building a bunch of gas stations, I'm going to call them gas stations, but they're electric stations with expensive equipment in them to fast charge these vehicles across the nation, would go on everybody's bill, whether they had an electric car or not. That gets added. And so they're lobbying the public utility commissions across the United States to make that happen. The whole system is dependent upon having electricity everywhere, which it is, but also having the charging systems that are very expensive to be able to do what needs to be done deployed, and the utility companies want us all to pay for that on our electric bills. It's good for them, and besides, then all of a sudden they'd have that many more consumers. we'll be publishing a paper this week at the Institute for Energy Research about the dependency of the United States and the world on China for batteries. I don't know if people know this or realize it, but we all remember the days of the Middle Eastern oil and OPEC and all the rest of that before we became energy independent by fracking that Joe Biden and his running mate want to stop. At the height of that, 1977, the United States was 37.5% dependent upon OPEC for our oil imports. And people were going crazy. This was when the Department of Energy was formed. This was when they came up with CAFE standards for cars because we're running out of oil and we're too dependent on the Arabs and all that stuff. All of those things that happened were as a consequence of that. That's less than half as dependent as we'll be on China for our batteries, because they control 80% of the world's battery market for these lithium-ion batteries that go into cars. Tesla has a factory here in the United States, but it's tiny in comparison. So much of the product that they bring in is made in China, manufactured in China. Not only that, but they control all the minerals, the manganese, the cobalt, the lithium, you name it. They've been going around the world buying up mining properties, and of course none in the United States because they won't let us mine here either, the same people that want us to go to these. And so what we're talking about is all of OPEC combined was only 37.5%. And they're talking about 80+% dependency on Chinese batteries. Make no mistake about it, the Green New Deal is a Chinese New Deal for Americans. And if you think that's a good idea, I don't know. I'd have a hard time having the discussion with it.
You know, Dan, explain to me, I'm an old man and set in my ways, and maybe my vision isn't as outward-reaching as a lot of people, but the grids, the electrical grids that we have now, how can they absorb more usage without becoming bigger and more dependent on other sources? And if those sources are going to be cut back to just green energy, wind and solar, how in the world are they going to transition what we have now over to a very not reliable source of energy and still keep the grids growing? I don't understand this.
Well, I mean, part of what they'd like to do, and we're seeing it in California, Zeb, because they've gone down this road faster than just about anyone, and we see the results. What they're talking about also is we need an updated grid. Well, they don't tell you why we need an updated grid. We need an upgraded grid because the producers of power, the sources that they're relying upon, don't work all the time. They only work when the sun shines and the wind blows. And at night in California, when people come home and turn on their air conditioning and start watching TV and their computers around and that sort of thing, the sun is going down, which means the solar is going away, and the power demand is going up, and that's when they have the blackouts. And so what they're saying is, gee, we need a really complicated system with lots of batteries from China to back it up, huge footprints on the earth full of Chinese batteries, all imported, and we'll draw down those batteries when the power can't be produced. We have a system. Our existing grid was based upon the idea that it's responsive to demand. You flip on the switch and the power flows. Turn on a motor somewhere and 220 comes. That's the way it was designed to work. What they're talking about is changing it entirely. And by the way, the same utilities would be able to charge consumers the 11% plus for investments in the grid as well. So they get it coming and going, right? They get additional capital expenditures they can write off on consumers, and it's slowly creeping up, but as this begins to hit more and more, people are going to see it in their electric bills.
I just can't understand why millennials, let's stick with that generation for just a moment. Let's say the 18 to 29-year-olds. They can't see through this smoke screen and say, holy smokes, by the time we're 40, energy costs are going to go through the roof, and we're going to have to be literally owing our soul to the company store just to have lights. Why can't they see through this?
Well, I heard on the news the other day that about half of them are living with their parents.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
So they probably don't pay the bills. And they probably don't, or if they were paying the bills, they got too much for them, and so they've moved back in with mom and dad. And, that's one of the things that happens when a couple sits down at the kitchen table and ciphers out the bills and pays them and things, it makes a difference. When somebody else is paying them, it doesn't make a difference to them. And I think part of it is just an unawareness of, people are growing up in some cases earlier than before, and in a lot of cases, in terms of reaching adulthood and taking care of those responsibilities, that's being put off longer and longer and longer.
Amen.
And we see it. We see it in the streets of America, in these big cities, where you've got, people in their 40s getting arrested for looting and burning. It's just. I don't know. Hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, I think you are 100% right. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is a true friend of this program, and when it comes to energy, all topics, he is very well gifted to talk about them and explain them to you. Dan Kish with the American Energy Alliance. I want to say this, he's also a very caring individual, and I thank him for all of his kind thoughts over the last couple of weeks. Dan, God bless you, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
God bless you and yours, Zeb. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan Kish. What a nice man, and I'm so honored and privileged to have him on my program. We're going to have a gentleman with the Pacific Legal Foundation coming up in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you that if you're hungry, and the way I've been cooking the last couple of weeks, it's no wonder that my belt's in the last hole right now. Man, I haven't been eating well. I think we better go to Denny's. Denny's Restaurant, 611 North Overland in Burley, and the other location at 291 Pole Line Road in Twin Falls. I mean, we're talking delicious food. When you pick up the menu, whether you're there for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or the desserts, you're going to look at all the pictures. You're going to look at all the explanation of what they are, what you'll get. Oh, it is good. At America's Diner, Denny's Restaurant, 611 North Overland in Burley. Please stop in, say hello. Super nice people serving you at America's Diner, Denny's Restaurant. There is a big happening coming up this Saturday, and I hope I can make it up there. I really want to go up and look at some outstanding colts and fillies at the Zollinger Quarter Horse Ranch 32nd Annual Production Sale this coming Saturday, September 12th. Preview at 10 o'clock. Go up and take a look at all these babies. Man, they are good-looking horses, let me tell you. And, of course, preview at 10, sale at 11. And where the Leo legacy continues. I mean, the Zollingers have put their heart and soul in the top colts and fillies with minds and talent and personality. You can contact Jerry and find out more, 670-3833. Don't forget this big Zollinger Quarter Horse Ranch 32nd Annual Production Sale this coming Saturday. And the preview at 10, sale at 11 at the ranch up in Oakley. And I'll tell you, it's going to be worth your time to go to this horse sale. Excellent. Also, want to remind you, too, about some other good friends of ours that, boy, I mean, with the fall coming on, and these cold temperatures I don't think are going to last very long. As a matter of fact, it should get back up into the 80s towards the weekends. Just a right temperature to get out and enjoy the hills, get on a trail with an a four-wheeler or a side-by-side. I don't know why I said that, but it was wrong. Side-by-side or four-wheeler from Let's Ride. 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World. I mean, go on over there, just walk in the showroom and say, whoa, here's what we'd like to do, and they'll point out the one that's going to be best for you. Absolutely enjoy the great outdoors. Side-by-sides, four-wheelers, all the accessories, and believe me, knowledgeable people to serve you at Let's Ride. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, Saturdays, 9 to 2, and also a great service department to keep you running at Let's Ride. 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World, where the fun is sold. One more note about some really good people over in that neck of the woods or that part of the desert. I want you to remember these names. Cameron Siemens Insurance. There, I'll say it again. Cameron Siemens Insurance. Life insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, employee benefits, all of this and more, and they are so dedicated to serving you, very devoted and responsive to your needs. All you need to do is just call the number 436-4424. Make an appointment. Bingo. The rest is up to them. They'll help you. Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. Really good people. This gentleman's been on our program before, and I look forward to having him back on today, and I'm going to give a little synopsis of what he's going to talk about, and then he can feel free to correct me if he deems necessary. But with the so-called pandemic of the coronavirus or COVID-19, there has been a power grab, a lust, and a tasting for more power by many governors all over the United States and mayors, and to take and claim more control over you. Therefore, I have Luke Waite with the Pacific Legal Foundation. Good morning, Luke. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be back.
Well, you know, I hope what I said, and Sean over at the station, I'm getting a lot of feedback on this call, please. And Luke, I'm going to ask you to speak really loud into your mouthpiece of your phone. Did I give a good synopsis of what's going on?
You did, absolutely. We've seen a great deal of what I would call autocratic rule coming across the country from governors, all over. It's not just Republican governors. It's not just Democrat governors. It's happening in places like Florida. It's happening in places like California, and it's continuing to happen. And virtually, there was just a handful of states at the very outset that the governors did not assert the power to unilaterally shut down the economy, but most states did that at the outset. It just broad, extraordinary powers. And whether or not they actually have those powers is a very, complicated questions. And sometimes, in some cases, because you actually have to look at the statutes governing the emergency powers. So the legislature passes a statute. It basically is supposed to give the governor a menu of options and says, well, in an emergency, you can do things like suspend regulation that would cause problems and helping us address this, or you can, evacuate people, that sort of thing. But very few states actually, contemplated this sort of emergency. Most states do say the governor, when you're faced with a contagious disease, can actually quarantine individuals or require them to self-isolate if they are personally suspected of having contracted the disease. But it's a totally different thing to assert just an open-ended power to shut down entire industries, as most governors throughout the country did at the outset, and a lot of governors still do. And then, to boot, in addition to the sort of the scope of their power, there's a real question about how long they should be able to continue to assert that power. Here in California, Governor Newsom made very clear recently that he's going to continue to micromanage our economy through emergency orders on an ongoing basis, basically until there's a vaccine, and we can all pray there's a vaccine tomorrow. We just don't know how long that will be.
You know, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about all this power, like Newsom in California and Whitmer in Michigan and many, many others, including our own governor here in the state of Idaho and Cuomo up in New York. I mean, why hasn't someone really challenged these people and threw the letter of the law in their face? What's going on here?
Well, there have been many lawsuits. Last I checked, about 2 weeks ago, there were something like 900 lawsuits that have been filed across the country. But a lot of those were rushed and were not very well thought through. People go into court saying, well, you're infringing upon my rights, under the Bill of Rights, my right to assemble, my right to do this and do that. And those kind of arguments are not going to go very far, unfortunately, because there's still an open question about some of the First Amendment stuff. If the Supreme Court actually does take up the case, but that remains to be seen. But in general, the courts are approaching those kind of arguments by invoking this case called Jacobson versus Massachusetts. It's from 1905, and in that case, the U.S. Supreme Court said that it is within the power of the state to actually to take whatever measures are necessary to adequately protect public health. And in that case, that's actually enforcing a requirement that people get a vaccine. And so the courts cite to this Jacobson case and say, so the state can do what it needs to address a public health emergency. Okay, accept that if you want. But the question is, as I've posted in a recent editorial to The Hill, the question is who should exercise the power. Yes, it is within the power of the state to address public health concerns, but that's the legislature's role. It's not the role of a governor, a single man or woman, to just make up the rules. Again, that's the definition of autocracy, is one man or woman making the rules without input from anyone else.
Let's talk about that just a little further, because you're very highly educated in this subject, I can tell. But let's use Governor Whitmer of Michigan demanding that no one go out on the lake with a boat, or demanding that if you go to a store you couldn't buy any sporting goods, you could buy something that she deemed necessary, or you couldn't buy plants for your garden. Newsom and other governors making demands. What about their legislatures? Why didn't they stand up and rear their ugly head and scream, no, you can't do that without us?
Well, the fact of the matter is, in Michigan, as well as North Carolina, for another example, the legislature has tried to assert itself, but you have a governor in that situation from a different party and a different mindset about how this should be addressed, who is basically is continuing to assert emergency powers. And in Michigan, there's a case going to the Supreme Court of the state to basically get to the bottom of whether or not she can continue, when the legislature wants to intervene, whether she can continue to assert emergency powers. The statute in Michigan says that she can rule by emergency powers for a while, but she basically went to the end of that period, said, okay, that emergency's over, and declared a new emergency. And so the question is, can she get around those sort of time limitations by saying, okay, the emergency's over, here's a new one? In California, the situation is very different. In California, you have a legislature of the same party as the governor, who basically is willing to allow the governor to continue doing what he's doing, partly because they don't want to assume responsibility to themselves and have to make the difficult decisions and bear the wrath of the voters for those decisions, and also partly because, well, they probably, I think, to a large extent, share the governor's, approach, or are okay with the governor's approach. But the bottom line is, again, it shouldn't be the governor doing it. If it was the legislature doing it, even if the legislature might ultimately do the same thing, and that's a hypothetical. We don't know what they would do if they were the ones making the decisions. But I'll tell you, I've been talking to small business owners who are really hurting because they've been shut down, and, for example, gym owners who cannot operate indoors, and that's very hard, by the way, to operate outdoors when it's 110 degrees and smoky here. And they say, look, I'm going to go out of business if this doesn't change. I know how to communicate and get a hold of my legislator and talk to them about things that they're proposing that would be bad for me. I don't know how to get a hold of Governor Newsom, because they're not going to his cocktail parties.
You know, I'm sitting here and I've got to ask you about Governor Murphy in New Jersey. And again, a same semblance of a story that you have in California that you just mentioned. In New Jersey, there was a gym owner that literally defied this. He went to all measures and means of making sure that his people that went to the gym stayed social distancing and everybody used the sanitary conditions, everybody used masks, etc. But yet Governor Murphy really went after this owner and said, I'm not only going to close your business down, I'm going to jerk your business license. Where in the world does that Gestapo have that kind of power?
Well, it probably depends on whether or not, to what extent, the state's emergency statute. So every state has passed a statute that basically says the governor can do certain sort of things, issue certain sorts of orders during an emergency. And the question often in these cases is, are they actually, it says they can do 12 things or 8 things, or is this one of those 8 things or 12 things? And the answer, in a lot of cases is that they're really twisting the words and really, relying on a very tenuous interpretation to get away with imposing these orders. But if you assume, for the sake of the argument anyways, that they have the power within that emergency statute, most of those statutes actually have a provision that says if you violate a legitimate order from the governor, then you face a misdemeanor, monetary penalties, and it may include other things as well, other sorts of penalties in there. But it really, it's the rule of law should not be suspended just because we declare an emergency. And so he's got to be able to point to the letter in the law and exactly where the statute says he could do that. And again, my issue is so many of these governors are asserting powers that just aren't there if you actually look at the statutes, or they are relying on very open-ended language. In Idaho, California, Oregon, there's a number of states that have language that says something to the effect that during an emergency, the governor has all of the police powers of the state. What that means is that the governor has the authority to literally do anything that the state could do, that the legislature could do. There's a problem there because we have a separation of powers in this country and also in the state constitutions. It's a principle of divided government, so the governor can only have so much power. He cannot exercise lawmaking power. And if the legislature purports to give away its lawmaking powers and give the governor the keys to the car, write him a blank check, there's a constitutional problem with that because that fundamentally undermines the separation of powers principle.
We have a caller on the air with a question for you. Go ahead, caller, quickly, please.
Well, you're from California, and I just would like to think that there's enough people there that might be waking up to the fact that their governor is whatever you want to call him. But Oregon and Washington are the same way, and like in Portland and Seattle, will there be enough people hold these Democratic mayors accountable, and maybe there could be a change or enough people come out and vote against them that they would change their minds or their tune, or are the people just so lost in those California, Oregon, and Washington that it just doesn't seem to be that they have any wherewithal to do anything but continue to do what they've always done, even though it doesn't work? I just don't understand it. I mean, California is on its behind, and they're continuing to allow it. I mean, is there any real litigation coming that's going to actually put some real pressure on these mayors and governors? I'll hang up.
Respond to the caller, please.
Sure, I think there was 2 elements to that question. One, what are the voters going to do? I think it needs to be seen. Californians are maybe a little accustomed to being ruled, and public polling on what folks think in general of what the governor is doing, I don't think it's particularly promising. However, I will say that what we've seen is there have been some sort of revolts. There are cases where sheriffs are refusing to enforce the governor's order. There are, on the industry level, there were the hairstylists. They began to violate the governor's orders. And a lot of them did because they did not say. They said we cannot operate outdoors, and so they just started violating the governor's orders. And surprisingly, the governor, when you began to face a lot of opposition, concerted opposition from those folks, he actually did end up balking and changing his orders there. So may be some hint that there is some possibility of political pressure, but I think that's the exception at the moment. And again, it remains to be seen what the voters will do. In terms of lawsuits, I will say at Pacific Legal Foundation, we are looking to ramp up our litigation. We've got a couple lawsuits across the country, one in Connecticut challenging Governor Lamont, emergency powers there where he's asserting the authority to shut down businesses at any time. We are challenging the city of Seattle and a number of different places, moratoriums on evictions, where the government has declared by fiat, without a basis of law, that landlords cannot evict folks. We do not suspend the Constitution just because there's an emergency. And I will say we are very seriously looking at possibilities of ramping up our litigation and challenging business closure orders elsewhere. I think we're very close to doing that in a couple places. So,
Luke, one final thought I want you to address this morning, if you would please, is I am absolutely adamant and really mad because churches haven't shown the backbone to stand up and fight what governors are saying across the United States about going to church and you can't go to church and you have to go in minimal numbers, etc. The First Amendment guarantees that churches be left alone for the free exercise of their religion. And these governors have stepped in it as far as I'm concerned, but nobody's fighting back.
Yeah, again, you run into that Jacobson case I was telling you about, where the courts will say, yeah, you're invoking your rights, but, your rights are outweighed when it comes to taking measures that are going to protect public health. At least that's what the courts have said so far. Now, I do hold out the possibility that the U.S. Supreme Court might take up one of these cases and actually issue a ruling, especially as these sort of restrictions continue. At first I think we all hoped that this was going to be a very temporary sort of thing, but it's not going away anytime soon. Again, Newsom made clear that when he gave our whole color coding system to the state in California of different counties, different colors, he did not include green in any of those because we're not returning to normalcy anytime soon, is what he said. So, I think it's possible, quite possible, that the U.S. Supreme Court takes up that case and hopefully vindicates the First Amendment rights. But that being said, the First Amendment is as much of a believer as I am in it. The courts do hold in general that the states and the localities can impose quote-unquote reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, so that they can impose, for example, zoning codes will dictate, some basic things about what sort of buildings can be built where and so forth. And so these are always sticky questions, but fundamentally I do think there's a problem, especially you take the fact that we can have as many people as we want go to the casino or the Costco, whatever the case is, but they say we can't gather the same way for a religious service, for mass, for church, whatever. There's a problem there, and Justice Gorsuch recently issued a dissenting opinion in a case where the Supreme Court did not take a case, but he obviously seemed to think that they should have taken the case, and he made his opinions on this matter very, very clear.
One final thought from you, Luke. Are we, as American citizens, with the greatest constitution ever of any country on the face of the earth, are we really lax in standing up for our rights and freedoms, and we've let this thing go to the point of no return?
Well, I think it's possible. I mean, I think we can assert ourselves still. I think last time I appeared here, I said that Americans are getting used to being ruled, and I think that there is a real risk of that we will normalize this sort of behavior and come to accept it. But that's why it's really important that we stand up and we challenge this now in the courts, and that people make themselves heard at the ballot box and express their disapproval if they don't like the way this is being handled. But again, ultimately, my point in all of this is that it should be, for the elected branches to be making these decisions, and the people, if they don't like the way the executive has been handling it, they have recourse through the ballot box. But ultimately, we should be also standing up and making this a moment to sort of revive constitutional principles and give people sort of a fresh take on why this is important, why this is relevant, and wasn't just a bunch of stuffy men 200 years ago. It matters today.
Absolutely. Luke, would you tell my audience, please, if they want to follow any stories about PLF, the Pacific Legal Foundation, what do they do?
well, check us out, pacificlegal.org. We have all sorts of lawsuits throughout the country protecting property rights and fighting for liberty, basically. So, again, and we are ramping up our COVID-19 litigation because, unfortunately, it's become very clear that this is going to continue, and this is the new normal. We cannot tolerate that. We've got to fight back.
Absolutely. Luke, I say God's blessings to you. You did a great job. Thank you, and come back soon.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
All right, sir. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Luke Waite, attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation, and wow, I mean, a great story. I read the story in its entirety that he had written about governors and unchecked claiming of power. Claiming is the key word, just saying, yep, that's the way it's going to be because I'm the governor. No. We're going to have more on that in the next couple of days. Right now, as I look at the clock on the wall, I've got to get the weather forecast in, and I hope these winds aren't going to come back like they did last night. Anybody that lives east of me, would you please look around your property and start bringing back some of my buckets and feed tubs and all that, please? They're gone, and you might have them. Windy night last night. The weather brought to you this hour by Phillips Oaks Goodwin Crane and Company, and they've been providing accounting services to the Mini-Cache area for well over 50 years. They are the professionals, the best in tax return preparation, tax planning, business consulting, bookkeeping services, retirement planning, all of this and so much more. Offices in Burley and Rupert. Yep. The professionals, Phillips Oaks Goodwin Crane and Company. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
A wind advisory for today, a freeze advisory for tonight. Here's a look at your weather forecast as we get back to the work week after the Labor Day weekend. Today we will see just a little bit of sunshine. That's going to be more towards the afternoon. We are expecting a high of 60, but we still have that wind warning in effect. Coming out of the northeast at about 17 miles an hour, gusts as high as 26 miles an hour. Clear skies for tonight with a low of 31. Tomorrow, sunny skies, winds dying down, high of 67 with an overnight low of 37. Sunny and 70 for Thursday, Friday, upper 70s. That's what's your weather for 7 to 8.
Wow, I tell you what, no more wind. Please, no more wind. Weather brought to you by our friends, Phillips Oaks Goodwin Crane and Company. As I said, they've been providing accounting services to the Mini-Cache area and beyond for over 50 years. These people really know, and they can help you. Believe me, they've helped my family, and they are excellent. The professionals with offices at 1710 Overland in Burley and 625th Street in Rupert. Don't forget, Phillips Oaks Goodwin Crane and Company. Couple of quick notes, and then we're going to have Dr. History on later on at 10:06 this morning. Don't forget that. Patterson's 421 East Main in Burley. Boy, when it comes to electronics, I don't know Kamir from Sikkim, but I can tell you what, these folks do. And they know everything, all the intricacies of all the home theater systems and the video surveillance cameras. Patterson's Electronics, they know, and they can share their knowledge and help you with the car stereos and speakers, complete sound systems, and all the TVs. Wow. I mean, every time I talk to Curtis and Lorena, the knowledge is there. They can help you. They're located at 421 East Main in Burley, and they're open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6. Please talk to the people that really know all these electronic devices and can help you. Patterson's Electronics, and that's, of course, on 421 East Main in Burley. Really, really nice people. Want to remind you, too, about some folks that have been with us for a long, long time on this program, and I mean that. And, boy, they really have the greatest selection of floor covering and carpet and all their great selections of furniture, whether it's dining room sets, chairs, and the recliner list there. I mean, they've got a whole herd, a whole remuda of recliners, and you got to go in and try one on, see how it fits you, and you're going to be so happy. And I'm talking about Lee's Furniture, Floors, and more. 459 Overland in Burley. Jeff and the rest of the staff serving you. And don't forget, they got all the Simmons Beauty Rest mattresses, too. Good night's sleep. Lee's Furniture, Floors, and more. 459 Overland in Burley. A little bit later on this morning, At about 10:32, we're going to have a good friend of ours come on the program, and that's James Taylor with the Heartland Institute back in Chicago, Illinois. And James, of course, has been on our program numerous times in the past, and he's going to be talking about the Democrats and the left with their idiocy of climate change and everything else. We're going to be talking about that with him. And tomorrow on the program, I just got word during the 9 o'clock news that Dr. Richard Lee is going to be on the program at 9:30, and he's going to be discussing another slap in the face of Christianity, where the United States Navy has been canceling masses at various naval bases. What's going on here? Well, we'll find out from him on tomorrow morning's program. Let's see, I had another note. Oh, again, for those of you that didn't know, Deanne is out of the hospital, and she is recuperating here at home, and I am Dr. Ben Casey and the maid and everything else all wrapped into one, and not doing a very good job of doing anything, but and especially with the cooking. I hope she recuperates, especially on my cooking, but she's doing much better. And the road to recovery, I hope it will be blessed by the good Lord above. Thank you for all your calls. Thank you for all your well wishes. It meant so much to me. Believe me. Right now, we're going to send it back over to Sean on the other side of the river or the creek or the stream, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to be back in about 7 minutes with more Zeb at the Ranch. Oh my, here we go. Hour number 3, Zeb at the Ranch on a Tuesday. I keep wanting to say Monday, but that's wrong. And we're going to have Dr. History in a moment. Don't forget, Zeb at the Ranch, brought to you by our major sponsor, your Magic Valley, Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you with the best in tires. Stop in and see them today. Along with some of our other great folks, and that includes Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Who's ever on the cell phone, call me back at 11. I'm on the air. That's as simply as I can say it. There you go. And right now, I also want to acknowledge some really good folks that have been with us for quite some time. Wonderful people at Greystone Crossing, and they're located at 1221 21st Street on El Fresco Road with a beautiful family unit for seniors. This is a beautiful location, and they provide 3 meals a day, plus snacks, plus housekeeping, local transportation, all included in the rent. And if you want to see this place, you call Matt or Kelly Wiggins at 650-4979. That number again, 650-4979. Greystone Crossing Senior Living, 1221 21st Street in Hayburn. And a quick shout out to 7K Metals. I mean, you, like me, can help build yourself a financial security future with silver purchases sent right to your home. Right to your home, absolutely. And it's a great saving opportunity for you and a valued treasure for your loved ones, too. Don't forget, find out more. Get a hold of Lon Hardy at 312-8699 or Sharon at 430-3259. Please tell them I told you to call. These are super nice people that can share with you all the information about silver purchases with 7K Metals. Well, I don't know if he's got any medals on him or if he could make it through a metal detector at an airport, but here he is. Hello, Dr. History.
Good morning, Zeb.
You can push that mic back this way just so there you go. Good.
The wind blew me all the way here. I'm not sure that I'll be able to make it home.
Did you have the sail at full tilt?
I did. Wow. I was in one of those wind wagons, that I talked about?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I thought of that last night. Honest to goodness, I was sitting there. How did they ever stop those things?
Well, it was a wind like last night. You'd be all the way to California probably in about 2 days.
Yeah, holy smokes. Anybody you have to thank this morning?
Not today, but I have gotten a few messages this past week, but I forgot to write down their names. So I will next week.
Well, just say it this way. To all the people I forgot their names, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. So So, Zeb, we're going to talk about the scourge of the Old West.
Scourge of the Old West.
Yeah.
You see, that had to be, well,
okay,
I'm not
a
sure.
person.
It wasn't a sickness, was it?
Smallpox.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
it was.
smallpox. I mean, that was called the scourge of the West, and especially to the Indians.
Yes.
It attacked whole tribes. It left few survivors. It has afflicted the Native Americans since it was carried to the Western Hemisphere by the Spanish clear back in the 16th century.
Wow.
Way back.
Wow.
But it was particularly deadly to the Plains Indians because none of these tribes had been exposed or developed an immunity, and the Indians actually called it rotting face. That's what they referred to it because of these sores and pustules that break out on the skin, and it would look like if somebody had it real bad, that their face was actually rotting away.
Did, at that time, most people that contracted this, did they pass away?
Yeah, we'll get to those figures kind of as we go along here. You know, and it could be contacted human to human by sneezing, coughing, and through the clothing of a person infected. There had been a catastrophic epidemic in about 1781, another one about 1801 on the plains that nearly wiped out the Mandan Indians, but the worst one was the 1837 epidemic, and it was kind of the coup de grace, if you want to call it that. That was kind of the really bad one. So this epidemic began in 1836, and it lasted until 1840, so about 4 years there. It was really, really bad. Mm-hmm. It actually reached its height in the spring of 1837. Now, an American fur company steamboat called the St. Peter's was plowing its way up the Missouri River to a trading post called Fort Clark. Now, on board were some infected passengers, including 3 Arikara women who got off the boat. Now, why Captain Bernard Pratt, skipper of the St. Peter, refused to quarantine those suspected of being affected that would kill thousands is a big question. Why? He knew that these people were sick.
Okay, now,
but he didn't quarantine
Did
them.
most people of the Old West at that time, did they know and observe and understand what it was?
Not really. Not really. I don't think they understood the how infected you could become even days and weeks after. So, but anyway, so on that steamboat, the St. Peter's, they stopped, and that evening a big celebration was held in the nearby Mandan village. The next morning, the St. Peter's, the steamboat, headed upstream for Fort Union, and bringing with it the deadly virus everywhere it stopped. And you know they had to stop to get wood. You know, but the only explanation for this Captain Pratt's action was simply greed. He was more interested in avoiding any delays in the schedule. He just wanted to get there, you know, and get the money, the pay. Now, the Mandan, they suffered the worst losses. The smallpox spread quickly through the area. In July of 1837, the Mandan population was about 2,000. Okay, and so that's July. By October, the survivors numbered less than 30.
Oh, wait a minute.
Only 30 out of 2,000. Yeah.
Almost more than like 98%. Yeah, 98 point something percent.
Yeah. There was a guy named Francis Chardon, commander at Fort Clark for the American Fur Company, and he wrote, quote, only 27 Mandans were left to tell the tale out of about.
And nothing was done because they didn't know what to do. Was there anything to do?
Well, we'll kind of talk about that, about inoculations.
Okay.
We'll get to that a little bit. But, you know, more than 17,000 Native Americans along the Missouri River died. Some tribes, like the Mandan, pretty much became extinct. The smallpox epidemic of 1837-38 all but wiped out the Mandan and severely reduced the Arikara, the Hidatsa, who also lived in fortified villages along the Missouri River. Now, they farmed corn, beans, and squash with buffalo hunting sometimes, but the buffalo hunting tribes who didn't farm and whose isolated bands, they weren't hit as hard by this epidemic. So they were out, you know, more isolated, and so they survived better. Now, there was a longboat heading up the Marias River to Fort McKenzie, carried the dreaded disease to the Blackfeet Indians. Up to then, they'd been one of the most warlike of the western tribes, and the main enemy to the American mountain men who tried to trap beaver in their lands. But it's estimated about two-thirds of the Blackfeet were also wiped out, about two-thirds. Now, about half of the Assiniboine and the Arikara, a third of the Crow, and a quarter of the Pawnee perished by the time 1840 hit. So in these last 3 years or 4, a lot of them had died. Now, the Plains Indians upstream from the Arikara had been denied access to the 1832 federal vaccination program by the Secretary of War. Now, ironically, that was the same year steamboats began hauling supplies and furs for the trading posts on the Missouri River. So vaccination was available, but they denied that to some of the Indians. Now, a trader at Fort Union wrote, quote, such a stench in the fort that it could be smelt at a distance of 300 yards.
My goodness.
Bodies were buried in mass graves. Some were tossed into rivers, which further spread.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Now, somebody had written a book or a story about this, and I remember that maybe it's this riverboat captain that you were talking about. When the people died, he just put their bodies and their corpses in the river.
Yeah, and so obviously that's going to spread the disease even more so.
Why?
And so over the next 3 years, the epidemic kind of traversed thousands of miles, reaching from California and up the Pacific coast all the way to Alaska. Now, you don't think of Alaska as having smallpox, but they did.
Really?
It spread that bad. Now, there's a story told of a great warrior who watched helplessly as his parents, his wife, and children died to this, what they call rotting face. He war-painted his pony and himself. He grabbed his lance, rode out to the top of a small butte, looked up at the sky, and challenged the cowardly disease to come out and fight him man to man like a real warrior. So obviously, you know, there was so much unknown about the disease.
But some came down with it, and some didn't.
Right, and so and will survive. There was survivors. So, but, you know, among the diseases the Europeans transmitted to the Indians, smallpox was actually absolutely the worst. I mean, this ugly disease, sometimes called variola, it spread like wildfire through the eastern tribes. In fact, there's a Reverend Cotton Mather. Okay, you've heard of him regarding the witch trials.
Oh, yeah.
Cotton Mather. And he kind of illustrates the attitude toward this tragedy, kind of an unchristian-like observation. He says, quote, the Indians in these parts had newly, even about a year or two before, been visited with such a prodigious pestilence as carried away not a tenth, but 9 parts of 10, yea, 'tis said 19 of 20 among them, so that the woods were almost cleared of those pernicious creatures to make room for a better growth.
Oh, my
In other words, he's saying this was all just fine to let the 90% of these Indians die so that we can have the land. I mean, kind of a...
Unbelievable.
Yeah. But the smallpox virus was transported in all directions by traders and the Indians. For 100 years, the fur trade brought Canadian merchants in contact with all the tribes, so they were going from tribe to tribe, you know.
Well, if they traded in blankets, wouldn't that be exposing it to other people? Yeah.
Exactly. Now, in 1780, the disease was so bad in Mexico and Texas and east to New Orleans, by the time the Comanches had horses, as did the Shoshones, and it's probable that the horse travel helped spread the disease more rapidly. Because, you know, now they were able to travel over long distances.
Yeah.
And with wandering plains tribes doing business and raiding over long distances, their contact with one another and with the less mobile tribes probably conducted the disease from one location to another. And this may have been the first epidemic to strike the Plains Indians, but it was by no means the last. Now, a few years ago, there was a guy named Keith Crane from Burley that has a huge collection of arrowheads. And he pointed out one arrowhead, and he said, this arrowhead was found over here along the Snake River. And he said, the only place you can find this stone for an arrowhead is in Florida.
Oh, my.
So the point is, trading went through all the tribes, clear from the east, south, west, north. So there was communication with all of these tribes.
If a tribe and or individuals contracted smallpox, how many actually lived through the experience?
That's a good question. And some probably had no symptoms. Some may have had maybe a mild case to where they were able to survive. But let me just tell you what what it is. It's actually characterized by a 2-week incubation period of fever and just general tiredness, followed by a kind of a pustular eruption all over the body, a severe fever, and then, of course, itching of the skin. The skin blisters, or what they call bulla, filled with fluid, then they burst, and they crust over, and the Native Americans called the disease another name. They called it, quote, many scabs, because that's what it did.
Yeah.
Now, smallpox was highly contagious. It was easily transmitted through body fluids or even dust in the air.
Really?
If you were in a tribe, and it could even be transmitted through.
Do you remember that movie with Kevin Costner and Robert Duvall? Yeah. And Robert Duvall saw this. He was trading with the Indians and everything, and he was kind of an old scamp. Saw him coming, and they ended up shooting the guy because he was a spreader of smallpox. Yeah. Remember that?
Yeah, but like say, even from the dust of the air, but scales from the skin of an infected person were highly infective, and they actually retained the smallpox virus for weeks, even after the person died. And worst of all, the disease had no effective treatment. Nothing. There was nothing they could do for it. Now, in addition to the harm of the disease itself, it was almost impossible for the afflicted person not to scratch the lesions, the sores, and open up these raw surfaces to more infection.
Oh, my.
And then the infection was often fatal. So if the smallpox didn't get you, the infection could. Now, among other complications that led to death were hemorrhage and pneumonia, and those who survived were often left really scarred, badly scarred, all over their body. Now, a few Indian tribes suspected that they'd been infected with, as you said, many scabs deliberately. Stories circulated that immigrants were giving the Indians blankets from sick beds. In some instances, the whites capitalized on the Indians' fear of the disease to manipulate them. And an example is that there was a Mr. McDougal, and he was an early settler on the Pacific coast, and he found himself in a confrontation with a large group of Indians, and he called the chiefs together and he said, quote, "The white men among you are few in number, but they are mighty. I hold the smallpox safely." And he pulled out a small bottle and held it up, and he said, "I have but to draw the cork and let loose the pestilence to sweep man, woman, and child from the face of the earth." The chiefs, with their limited knowledge, they were horrified, and after that they called McDougal the Great Smallpox Chief, like as if he had the power to spread this over to all these tribes. Well, certain years were particularly bad for the smallpox. In 1833, a party of Crows met a caravan of 6 immigrants who unsuccessfully attempted to warn them off. And after some of the Crows became infected, fear scattered the people over the countryside. This panicked escape may have prevented a few Indians from catching the disease, but many of them still died.
What was the motivating factor to spread the disease?
That is a good question. I have no idea why a trapper or a mountain man or anybody would, unless they just felt like the Indians were the enemy and let's wipe them out.
Wow.
But, it's estimated that only about 1 in 6 or 7 of those infected ever recovered.
My.
So then this one guy that reported, he said, quote, "More than 1,000 fingers are said to have been cut off by the relatives of the dead. Amputation of fingers as a memorial to the loss of a loved one was a common act of grief among Native Americans."
You're pretty gruesome this morning.
I know, don't. Well, I'm not done. Well, I'm almost done, thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
So this guy named Denouncing, who was actually a survivor of smallpox, and this is his description of this episode. He said, 1,000 souls contracted the disease at the same time, reducing them to 30 lodges. Other bands coming in caught the infection. The dead were daily thrown into the river by cartloads.
Oh my.
A singular characteristic of this disease was that 2/3 or more died before any eruption appeared, before any symptoms. This event was always accompanied by hemorrhages from the mouth and ears. The fever rose to a pitch of frenzy. An Indian near the fort named Little Dog, after losing his favorite child, proposed to his wife to kill the whole family before they were so much disfigured as to prevent a disgusting appearance in the future world. She agreed with the stipulation that he should kill her before the children.
Oh my goodness.
That's how fearful and deadly it was. Now this same guy, he goes on to say that some of the sick Indians were treated in the fort with purging and bleeding, and of course we know that doesn't work, and they all died.
So nobody really knew.
No. Now, despite the kind of compassionless attitude that many of the whites expressed toward the Indians' plight, most white people were concerned about the sick Indians and actually did try to help. So there was some help. When the Gros Ventres on the Milk River were infected with smallpox in 1869, the government provided a hospital with blankets, supplies, and medicine. Nevertheless, there were 741 of the Gros Ventres that died. The Indian agent, a guy named A.S. Reed, advised the Indians to scatter their lodges, which would be and that actually helped, to spread out. 25 miles away, there was a Dr. Ash of General Sheridan's staff, and in an attempt to stop the epidemic, he vaccinated and moved the River Crow tribe across the Missouri River, and only 35 of them died.
You said that the smallpox, a lot of the records you were referring to started like in the 1830s?
Well, clear back to the 16th century.
Okay, but then it progressed to 1830, and then all the way up to 1869.
Right. There was three epidemics. Now, so vaccine was actually introduced by a guy named Edward Jenner in the year 1796. And what he did, he observed that milkmaids who previously had caught cowpox did not catch smallpox. Okay, because they got it from the cow. So they maybe they had a sore on their hand.
Got it from the cow or the milk?
No, the cow, from the sore on the cow's udder.
I see.
Okay, and it showed that the vaccine, this cowpox vaccine, prevented smallpox. And he was not the first. There were some others that came up with this idea. But so basically what you did, you took fluid from an infected person, and you would kind of puncture the skin and put this, we would call it an attenuated version of the virus. In other words, a weakened form of the virus.
I see.
And actually, in the United States here, and I think maybe worldwide, vaccination for smallpox stopped about 1972. But they figured that in the 1900s, over 300 million people worldwide.
Oh, my.
So we're talking Europe, South America, everywhere. Over 300 million from smallpox. And now it's pretty much, non-existent.
When you say pretty much, they said the same thing about polio, but it's coming back.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean,
really.
I guess the question is some of these old diseases may have changed just enough to cause problems in the future. So,
So there's a mutation.
Possibly. I mean, I'm not a scientist in that respect, but, I just think, I think we are more aware of, if like smallpox and these things as ways to hopefully prevent and treat.
Was it prominent mostly in warmer climates, or was it up north in?
It did get to Alaska, so and it was across the northern plains here.
Okay.
So even though we had winters, cold winters, you would almost think that maybe the cold would help slow it down. But I don't know that. I don't know.
Wow, that was terrible.
It really was. And
terrible.
To watch your family of, to lose 98% of your tribe.
Yeah.
That's your family, your friends, your neighbors.
What was that tribe you said they only had 30 left? What was the name
Mandans.
of it? Did they ever come back as a tribe?
That's a good question. I wondered about that because I think they have.
Yeah, back in the Dakotas.
Yeah. So I think there are a goodly number of the Mandans still around that have survived.
Wow. So, when was the vaccine basically available for the entirety of the United States?
Boy, that would have been, probably in the, I'm going to say, well, this guy in 1796, as Edward Jenner, came up with the vaccine. But to be widely available, it probably was more like into the mid-1800s.
Wow. Well, it was a gruesome story, but part of the Old West.
Oh, well, let me show you pictures, Ed.
There's
a person that's completely
is so disgusting. That
completely
poor person.
Covered,
Oh my goodness sakes!
And no escape from the pain. So
listen, you always put forth an excellent product, Dr. History, and thank you for coming by.
You're welcome, Zeb.
All right, my dear friend, thank you. Dr. History every Tuesday right here on Zeb at the Ranch, and we really appreciate him. Sometimes the stories are a little graphic and all part of the truth of the Old West. Right now, let's send it back over to our main studio. I'll be back with our next guest in about 3 minutes.
And now, back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KBAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb Bell.
My next guest really, basically, in cowboy terms, saved my bacon this morning because I had a cancellation and I needed somebody to fill in, and I could not think of anybody better than him. And he knows all about what's going on with purported climate change and the left and what they're trying to do to us. He's with the Heartland Institute, and I say good morning to a dear friend of this program, James Taylor. Sir, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Zeb. I'm always happy to be on your program. So, sorry about your other guest, but it made my day.
Well, I appreciate your help, and I think what I'd like to do this morning, James, is you tell me and my audience, what are your fears about the Biden and Harris possibility of becoming president and vice president, and what the Democratic platform would do to America and its citizens with climate change?
Well, I'm glad you asked, and we certainly can talk about the economic damage and the affront on individual freedom that will occur, but let me start by mentioning, let's go into their own ball court. Oftentimes the assertion, well, really pretty much always, when the climate left is proposing their carbon dioxide restrictions, they say it's to save the planet, it's for the sake of the environment. But if you look at the Biden-Harris climate plan, this would be the worst thing that could ever happen to America's environment. Now, what Biden and Harris are proposing is a carbon dioxide-free energy economy within the next 20 years. But if we were to make our electricity grid run solely on these sources, it would require developing a substantial amount of land in the United States. So, for example, 2 Harvard University professors who believe in a climate crisis and are looking for solutions, they looked at how much wind power would need to be added to the grid to make us carbon dioxide free. What they found is we would have to cover fully 1/3 of the American landmass with wind turbines to meet just existing electricity demands. And if we electrify transportation, if we make all automobiles run on an electric battery, as the Biden plan would require, now we're talking at least 1/2 of America's lands being taken over, developed, and populated by wind turbines. Think about the environmental catastrophe that would be. Think about all the forests that would have to be leveled, all the open spaces that would become no-fly zones as wind turbines sliced in mid-flight any bird or bat that dares fly there. Think about the aesthetic destruction of our most beautiful places, coastal shorelines, mountaintop ridges, open plains. This is the Biden-Harris climate plan. And one other thing, in addition to developing and destroying so much, literally half of America's land, also in order to power these devices, the solar panels and the wind turbines, you need a substantial amount of rare earth minerals. And rare earth minerals, according to environmental activist groups themselves, is about the most environmentally destructive practice that occurs in the world today. Now, we're largely immune from it in America because China is the only nation that will freely allow rare earth mining. But if we're going to ramp up our wind turbine and solar panel use, we're going to have to start doing a lot of that in America, too, and the results would be absolutely devastating for the environment.
You know, I had earlier this morning a dear friend of mine, you may know him, Dan Kish with the American Energy Alliance, and he said absolutely the same thing that you're talking about. I can't even envision the amount of land and the pestilence and the degradation of our great United States with all those solar panels and all these wind turbines. We have some very close to us, and I call them cancers on the landscape. But, you know, talking about solar panels, all the minerals that are needed, and it seems like the Chinese have the handle on that, we would be absolutely perpetrating and furthering a great economic boom to China, would we not?
Well, not only would we be advancing their economy at our own expense, but just as importantly, we would be putting ourselves, our entire electric grid, at the mercy of Chinese political blackmail. Indeed, just recently, a high-ranking member of the Chinese Communist Party said in an interview, and we've documented this on our website at climaterealism.com, said in an interview that China may withhold essential vitamins and medical supplies to the United States during this COVID outbreak as a negotiating tactic because they don't like President Trump getting tough on them in other areas. Now, if they're willing to do that regarding essential health medicines, and one can only imagine what would happen when we make our entire electric grid dependent upon rare earth minerals and components mined and manufactured in China. So we'll wake up one day, if we were to put this Biden climate plan into place where we have our entire energy economy running on wind turbines and solar panels, China at any point in time can say, you know what, we don't like you, or we don't like what you're doing, or we want you to do something else. And unless you do what we say, we are going to cut this off right now, and you will not have electricity in the United States. They literally can do it. It's not some science fiction dystopian view. That's what they will have the power to do. And for a nation that treats us with such hostility, it is not far-fetched at all that is the position we would put ourselves in, and that is the ultimatum that would be delivered to us under a Biden-Harris energy and climate plan.
You know, James, tell me this. I mean, I want to be really basic on this program, but why? Why are we as Americans so gullible?
I lost...
Are you there?
I can't hear you anymore.
Can you hear me now? Sean, evidently he's lost his ability to hear me. Can you make sure you run the toggle switch?
I'm working on it.
Okay. Hopefully we...
I still can't hear you. I will hang up and hope to hear another call from you.
All right. If you could call him back, I would really appreciate that. Evidently, we lost our connection, and Sean over at the station will take care of reconnecting. While I have just a moment, I guess we could run the weather forecast and get him back established on the air. Weather this hour brought to you by Scarro's Meats, 331 North Road, Jerome, and, of course, the telephone number to call, 324-7657. You can go to their website, scarrowsmeats.com. Absolutely all the delicious meats for any and all occasions. Absolutely phenomenal. All right, I'll get right with him. Let's finish this weather so I don't have to interrupt him again. And, of course, the best of meats from Scarrow's Meats. Here's Gina with our great weather forecast.
A wind advisory for today, a freeze advisory for tonight. Here's a look at your weather forecast as we get back to the work week after the Labor Day weekend. Today we will see just a little bit of sunshine. That's going to be more towards the afternoon. We are expecting a high of 60, but we still have that wind warning in effect coming out of the northeast at about 17 miles an hour. Gusts as high as 26 miles an hour. Clear skies for tonight with a low of 31. Tomorrow, sunny skies, winds dying down, high of 67 with an overnight low of 37. Sunny and 70 for Thursday, Friday. upper 70s. That's look at your weather for Zebit Duran.
Thank you, Gina. Brought to you by Scarrows Meats, 331 North Road, Jerome. Don Scarrow and the crew at 324-7657. They are changing the way we eat, one delicious bite at a time. After that horrendous windstorm last night, it doesn't surprise me that maybe phone connections are somewhat limited or maybe going to get disconnected every now and then. We're back on the air with James Taylor with the Heartland Institute. James, I'm sorry we had that breakdown. Thank you for coming back.
Well, I'm glad to be back. I'm not sure what point we broke down, but I hope that most of my last comments made it through.
They did. Let me ask you this. You mentioned this a little bit ago, that over half of the land in the United States would have to be obtained for solar panels and wind turbines. What about private property rights? Is that going to go by the wayside?
Well, that's a fantastic point, because although the federal government and the state governments, too, own much more land than they should, still more than 50% of the land is in this country is in private hands. So if you're going to need 50% of the country's land for wind turbines and solar panels, I'd like to see how that neat trick will be pulled off, because I guarantee you that the renewable energy corporations are not going to want to have to bid for and pay actual value for the lands they desire. So I assume there would be all sorts of condemnations and eminent domain abuses sought on their behalf.
What does the left hope to achieve? And Sean, we've got feedback on the line a little bit, if you would, please. What does the left hope to achieve through the solar and the wind turbine green energy program? I mean, I see people going broke. I see taxpayers not becoming taxpayers anymore. I see this country slipping into a status of a third world country.
Absolutely. And obtaining control over the economy is a nice way to obtain control over our lives. It's not a coincidence that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez utilized the Green New Deal as her signature proposal. I mean, she is a socialist. She is a proud socialist who says she would like to transform all of America's society and economy into that of a socialist nation. And that is what is embedded in the Green New Deal. And for people on the left, not just in the United States, but globally as well, climate change is the vehicle by which they attempt to and believe they can insert, like as in a Trojan horse, their socialist agenda. Indeed, in January in Davos, Switzerland, at the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, now this is a nonprofit organization for which members are the world's political leaders, the world's richest billionaires, the largest corporations. They have come out, if you go onto their website, they are planning a, quote, great reset of global capitalism. And they are utilizing climate change fears as their excuse and instrument. So I don't know to what extent the climate left actually believes in a climate crisis, but they certainly are using it as a means to transform America and Western democracy away from the free market economies that have brought such wealth to our nations, and instead make us beholden to the rest of the world and their failed socialist economies and societies.
You know, James, I was sitting here thinking while you were talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And here is a 30-plus-year-old bartender that doesn't know Khmer from Sikkim. And now Joe Biden has tabbed her possibly to be the energy czar if he's elected. Have you or anybody else in your field of endeavor with the Heartland Institute or anybody else sat down and challenged them, especially her, to a debate on green energy and common sense and what's really true and untrue?
Boy, we would love to have that happen. Have I formally challenged her, or has Heartland formally challenged her? No. Perhaps we can issue such a challenge. We just know from experience that any time that we attempt to have a debate or even just a conversation on these issues, they refuse to participate. But perhaps a public relations campaign calling for such a debate, or at least panel discussion, is called for. But they have no interest, just like Al Gore has no interest in fielding critical questions from an objective media. to the extent he'll ever take any questions in public appearances, it's softball questions that have been pre-screened and pre-vetted. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the climate left have no interest in any actual discussion, conversation, or questions that are not pre-vetted and simply serving up their ability to deliver their bullet point talking points without any discussion or critique.
Let me ask you one final thought here I'd like you to elaborate on, James. Our education system, whether it's kindergarten or up to the university system, have we lost these kids to a loss of common sense, a lack of understanding?
Your end.
I beg your
conversation, unfortunately.
Oh, my goodness, we're having trouble with that again. Try one more time. Can you hear me now? Evidently, we've lost him, and the line has gone dead, and I don't know about this system. I sometimes question if we'd be better with a string and a couple of paper cups. But I want... No, I tell you what, we'll wrap it up for today, but please just call him back and tell him I said thank you, and I'll be in touch with him. I don't know what happened to the phone system this morning, but not working right. I want to say thank you to James Taylor and all the points that he made in regards to green energy, and I would love to see someone of his magnitude and his education sit down and really across the table from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a woman that doesn't know anything about what goes on in the real world. A bartender and absolutely never been on a farm, never knew how crops were grown, didn't understand a thing. And she's going to be the new energy czar for solar and wind power. Are you kidding me? The Heartland Institute, the gentleman that we just had on the air, James Taylor, I want to say thank you to him so much because of what he brought to the program this morning. I'm going to call and apologize for what happened, something wrong with the phone lines or whatever, and try to get him back on an established time in the future. So, James, thank you very much for all that you do. Appreciate it. Got time for a couple of calls. Give me a jingle. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. While I'm waiting for your call that I would love to have because I'm padding some time, unfortunately we ran off the phone line with James Taylor, and I again want to have him back. I want to remind you about our great 7 locations of your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Absolutely the best at what they do. A lot of people think just tires. Not just tires at all. They've got highly trained brake technicians that are absolutely trained to make sure that you've got the best in driving safety with brakes that are going to put the whoa on when you need to stop. Absolutely. Front end alignment, shocks and struts, batteries, all of this and so much more at all 7 locations. Getting closer to fall, and that means, of course, wintertime around the corner, and make sure that you're protected with the best in tires and all that they offer, brake service, etc., at all 7 locations. James in Buell, Dan on Pole Line in Twin Falls, Lane in Rupert, Mike in Jerome, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, the Twist family in Paul, and Trent, of course, on Overland in Burley. The best. And let me say quickly, too, they've got those service trucks that'll be out there to the farm and dairy, the ranch, to help you get your equipment going again. You better believe it. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. What have we got cooking for tomorrow's program? And we're going to have Dave Bigo coming on the program from Indianapolis, Indiana. Then we've got Dr. Richard Lee, and I hope we get the phone problems straightened out for tomorrow so we don't have this problem again. Dr. Richard Lee, and he's going to be telling us about the United States Navy canceling various church services at naval bases. Then my dear friend Jerry Zollinger, and I can't speak highly enough about Jerry. He's such a good friend, and they're going to have that tremendous quarter horse sale coming up this Saturday at the ranch up in Oakley. Don't forget that. And then, of course, at 10:32, Michael Doherty. He's been on our program a long, long time. He's going to be talking about how the kind of a Cold War with China over various things is becoming much hotter. And the United States considering blacklisting certain chips that are manufactured over in China because they're carrying and relaying a lot of our very important information right here in the United States. So all of that's coming up tomorrow. I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to ask Sean a favor if he can play a tune extra here this morning. My lovely bride is at home right now in a recuperation process. It's going to take quite some time. And again, I thank all of you out there in the audience. It was a kind of a dark 2 weeks without my lovely wife here at home. And now that we got her home, we got to make her better. And thank you for all your kind thoughts over the last couple of weeks. I was a mess and tried to put this program together. She is absolutely indispensable, and to have her not here, it was really hard. It was hard. Thank you for all your kind thoughts. Sean, if you don't mind, I've got some other business I've got to take care of for her and some calls that have to be made, and I don't normally like to do this, to leave the program a couple of minutes earlier than anticipated, but if you could help me out, I'm just going to say to everybody, the way things were are the way things ought to be, and the 4 words that mean the most to me and my lovely wife, Deanne, in God we trust. We must. And we'll be back tomorrow morning at 8:06. Zeb at the Ranch, you have a great day.